I have decided something. What have you decided? I have decided
that
when we're born, we have a mommy and daddy, right? And then when we grow up and get married, we have children of our own. And then our children grow up and get married and have children. And so on and so on. So it's very important and very fun also to...
All right, stop. Collaborate and listen. Interesting Sex is back with a brand new episode. Something grabs a hold of me tightly. Then I flow that harpoon daily and nightly. Will it ever stop? Yo, I hope not. Turn off the lights and I'll fuck. Okay, I'll also fuck with the lights on too, though, so whatevs. I wish I was cool, but apparently that's not going to happen. Hey guys, it's Miranda, and you're listening to Interesting Sex. It's a podcast. We talk about who, how, where, and why we fuck. We have a good time here. I'm happy you're here. Please rate and subscribe. Tell your friends, because everyone needs to be aware and have fun, and that's what I want people to do, is live a little. Anyway, if you think you have interesting sex and you want to be on the show, please go to InterestingSexPodcast.com or InterestingSexPodcast@gmail.com and send me a message. I like to hear about your sex, please, or any feedback you have or just anything you want to say to me. Today I have a guest, and his name is Sir John. We get into some really interesting stuff. We get to go a little bit deeper into the daddy-dom little girl dynamic, and we also get to go a little bit into the master-slave dynamic, and he's just a kink living in Austin, Texas, and living his best life. I can't blame him. So let's open our ears, our hearts, and our holes and give a nice, warm welcome to Sir John.
Hello.
Hi, is this Sir John?
It is.
Hi, John. This is Miranda calling from Interesting Sex.
Good morning.
How are you doing today?
Miranda?
I'm good. I'm a little nervous this morning to talk to you.
Why is that?
Because you're known as MFdom, a motherfucking dom.
This is true.
And that's a little intimidating. So you go by Sir John in your community?
Yes. So MFdom is my username on FetLife, and I picked that because I thought it was a nice, clever name, easy for people to remember for online correspondence. But then I realized that it's not the most pronounceable thing at play parties or social events. So that's why also sometimes people call me Sir John, especially at fetish events. That name is also good for people that explore the power dynamic. If I meet people that aren't into the power dynamic, or if they themselves identify as a dom, they can call me John. So I'm pretty flexible.
So if I do enjoy power dynamics, but I am not your submissive.
That's a great question. A lot of people get hung up on titles, what they get called and so forth. And
I just want to be respectful to you as well.
I appreciate that. If you are a practicer of power dynamics, I think even most doms are okay calling other doms, sir this or mistress that. So it's not an odd thing. If anybody feels uncomfortable with it, if they, don't believe in that, or if they have some power dynamic that they're only supposed to call their dom sir, and I would say this is very rare, but somebody like that could certainly just call me John.
I am not hung up on words, so I will call you Sir John.
Sounds great.
It does sound great. I like it already, Sir John.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want people to be able to look you up really quick if they want to check out your Instagram. Some people probably don't have FetLife. I just got it myself. Tell them how they can find you on FetLife or Instagram so they can take a peek at what you do.
Sure. Thank you. So on FetLife, I am MFdom. That's motherfucking dom. On Instagram, I'm MF Photodom. Or people can view a lot more photos if they are on Fet at MFdom.
Okay. So tell me who you are as a human and how you identify sexually and as a person.
Well, as a human, I'm a business person. I'm a photographer. I try to be a good human being. I'm active in various aspects of the fetish community. I guess with regards to sexuality, some of the attributes that define me are I am a dominant in the power dynamic. I'm polyamorous. I am a straight male, a cis male. I guess that's a good start on labels and categories.
Okay, that sounds good. And you do have a couple partners currently, correct?
Yes, I have 2 long-term partners that I love and am very proud of. For the purposes of short names versus usernames and whatever, we can call one Kitten and we can call the other Rose.
Which one have you been with longer?
Kitten and I just passed 3 years.
Okay. And how long have you been with Rose?
A little over 1.5 years.
Okay. Do they have other partners as well, or are you their only partner?
So they each have different dynamics with me, but in the context of our relationships right now, one of the things that is important to us is that I am a very controlling dom and that I do have ownership of them. So Kitten actually identifies as my slave. So we're in a 24/7 power exchange lifestyle. And so she does not have other sexual partners that are male, but she does have play partners that are non-sexual, that could be of any gender. And she does have sexual partners that are female. And Rose right now is just very focused on our relationship, and she is enjoying having non-sexual partners besides me, but hasn't been interested in exploring any sort of sexual activity outside of that relationship.
And they don't get jealous of each other?
Jealousy is definitely a thing in human interaction, whether it's monogamous, polyamorous, family, like, why did he get a new bicycle and I didn't get a new bicycle between kids? So we all get jealous. I would never say that any of us get jealous or envious of somebody else having something else. But, it's very manageable and it's very situational. It's like, oh, well, I wanted to do this thing Saturday, but you're doing a different thing Saturday with somebody else, right? And we all have that kind of letdown, even between friends, right? So I wouldn't say there's no jealousy. I would say that we communicate and love each other, and that any jealousy, like any other problem, we have to manage together.
Do you keep those relationships separate, or do you sometimes have them together?
They definitely know each other, but we're not like involved as a triad, a threesome of people or anything. But at events, certainly, they know each other, and it's definitely not like completely separate worlds, but it's not like one intermingled, everybody together at once thing.
Do you think they like each other?
I think that they definitely have a healthy love and respect for each other and their importance to me. And they're both very nurturing of what I'm doing, when I'm not with them. For example, so I'm learning Shibari. I'm still kind of at the advanced beginner or early intermediate level. And I suspend Kitten quite a bit, but Kitten is an experienced bottom for Shibari. If you need me to explain any of these terms for your audience, I can. But
right, so Shibari is the Japanese style of rope tie. That's really beautiful. And then the bottom is the person that's getting tied.
Exactly.
Yes.
So Kitten is very experienced.
I'm getting good at this stuff.
Yeah, you're good. Kitten is very experienced as a bottom, so she's able to give feedback. Hey, this line pinches. I feel like my weight would be better distributed there, et cetera, right? So I've been tying Kitten for longer, and since she has more experience tying with others besides me, I have felt very safe in suspending her because she can give me that feedback. I only just recently suspended Rose for the first time, and Rose had never suspended before. But I got to the point where I felt like, okay, let's try this together, and it was very beautiful, and Kitten was extremely supportive of me doing that. That suspension with Rose, and thought it was wonderful that we'd hit that milestone. So that's just an example of how the relationships can support each other. In both cases, with both Kitten and Rose, there's an element of dominance and submission, of course. There's also an element of me being a daddy dom to them. So we may need to explain that to your listeners. But basically, daddy dom is where you are very nurturing to the person that you're dominant over. So it's not just about sadism and control and meanness which is not at all what dominance is about in the first place, but that's sort of the stereotypical, you're just dominant, right? You're just a scary person. Well, in a daddy-dom relationship, it's kind of about dominating that person, possibly scaring them, possibly causing them pain if that's what they're into, possibly putting them in uncomfortable positions, that there's an element of helping them grow there, like I'm going to push you beyond your boundaries. But in a daddy-dom relationship, the one thing that's added to that is an extra dose of the nurturing. And that can involve some degree of age play, like saying, hey, I want to go and have a sleepover with my friends. Can I do that? Sort of thing. But it doesn't even have to involve that. It can just be about the nurturing aspect of, hey, I'm bringing you up and I'm protecting you. A lot of these lines are kind of blurry, right? Again, a regular dom may be doing that for his or her submissive, but there's an extra element of it, I think, for daddy doms, especially those who have people who identify at least part of the time as littles or middles.
I want to get into this daddy dom stuff, but first I want to go back to how you said Kitten is your slave. Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about what that means and what that looks like in your relationship and what's the difference between that and just a regular submissive relationship.
Yes. So the difference between a slave and submissive is also something that you'll hear or see lots of writings on, lots of opinions about. What it means to us, it means that she is my submissive. We intend for it to be permanent. So there's a permanence there that we view as something akin to marriage. And obviously there are marriages that break up, and that's a tragedy as far as those relationships staying together. So we know that marriage is not necessarily always permanent, but it's intended to be, right? So in a master-slave dynamic, I've never found one yet that wasn't intended to be permanent. So I think that is something that sets it in a certain category. I think that it's also about the power exchange being total and 24/7, which is, again, not to say that somebody who identifies as dominant submissive can't be 24/7, but I think that if you are master-slave, then you definitely are 24/7. So you may have to dial it back if you're at a work party or whatever, but there's always the little hints there. So, for example, I'm always opening the door for Kitten because in our style of dominant submission, she's not allowed to open doors if I'm present. And that involves yet another aspect of our dynamic, which is a little bit of the 1950s lifestyle. But in the dynamic that we have together, the mixture of things, she has a career, very successful career, but she only works it part-time. So she works outside of the house about 2 days a week, and the other 3 work days of the week, if you will, she's responsible for keeping the house. So she's doing the cooking, which she's excellent at. She loves making craft cocktails for me after work. She's doing the cleaning, which also works really well because she has very high standards for cleaning. So if it were up to me or anybody else, the house wouldn't be up to her standards. So for us, master-slave is about the totality of the power exchange, the fact that it's 24/7, the fact that it is meant to last forever, the fact that there are protocols involved, and the fact that it's partly her job, right? I mean, part of her contribution to the household is to do those things. So it's all those things.
Do you give her an allowance for the other money that she's not making and she's doing at home, or what do you do?
There's not like a, X dollars a month allowance, but if she needs money, she just tells me, hey, I need this money, and I just sell it to her for household stuff, or if she needed to pay for something she didn't have money on, I'd just sell it to her.
What does Zelly mean?
Zelle? I guess it's Zelle. I don't even know how you say it. It's the little banking app that Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase all use.
Gotcha.
It's like Venmo or PayPal.
Okay, yeah, we all use Venmo. Okay.
I think it's actually Zelle.
So do you have other play partners too?
Yes.
Do you get to have sex with them also?
Currently, I don't have any other play partners that I'm having sex with. It would be allowed under the contract that I have with both Kitten and Rose, and I would communicate to them, hey, this new thing is happening or has happened, so they would know.
You mentioned that you are controlling. Mm-hmm. So you would probably be the most jealous. Do you think that's why you're why do you think you're feel the need to be so controlling over them?
Well, partly because it is my nature to control things, and partly because it's their nature to be controlled. So they both want a role where certain decisions are made for them, certain guidelines are set for them, certain rules are made for them. That is what they've sought out when they're seeking to be submissive or slave.
So if you're at a party with Kitten and she has to go to the bathroom, but there's like a door to the hallway and a door to the bathroom and you're there, does she have to come ask you to use the bathroom and then you would walk her there to open the doors for her?
So if we were walking into the party, I would open the door for her, and then we would be at the party. She would be on what we consider an elevated level of protocol. So there are different levels of protocol. Again, the most basic, if you're in a vanilla context, is you have to keep everything on the down low, right? But it's still not unusual for somebody to open the door for someone else, right?
Right.
So we would still do that if it's not an obvious thing. If there were 4 people getting out of a car in a vanilla context, I wouldn't necessarily run around to the other side of the car to open her door only, right? Because that would stand out. If it was a house with doors that we were moving through, I would open every one of those if we were traveling together. If she was going to leave me to go to the bathroom, she would ask my permission to leave me, and then she could proceed on her own to open doors.
Okay, and is that your really the only rule that you have when you guys are out and like?
No, so she also doesn't call me by my name. She calls me either sir or master or my lord or daddy, depending on what sort of mood she's in and again, the formality of the occasion. Sir would be most typical in a setting like that. If we're out just together, and again, if she's feeling younger or feeling more playful, then daddy would be the most common thing that she would call me.
At like a regular like holiday party, she would still call you sir?
She would typically call me sir in all but the most, vanilla context. Again, if it was at a banquet for my work, then she would actually have a very hard time calling me by my name, but she could do it in that context. But fortunately, we live in Texas, so calling people sir or ma'am is like not all that strange, right?
Right.
So even if we're out to dinner, and the waiter comes by, she might say, "Oh, sir, are you ready to order?" Right. And
right.
If the waiter notices, we don't care that much, right?
Right.
But probably the waiter doesn't even notice. I mean, another thing that we would do in that scenario is she would plate my food for me. So if we were sharing tapas, let's say, she would plate the tapas for me. That is how she would serve me in a dinner context where she hasn't prepared the dinner and hasn't brought it to me. She would do that. Or if we were sharing a bottle of wine, she would ensure that she's pouring the wine for both of us.
You mentioned like a 50s kind of style relationship.
Right.
So, because I even had that in my notes earlier, like what's the difference of someone taking care of you in that way and a 50s housewife, know?
Well, so that's part of it. So we definitely identify as a 1950s household where...
I think the 50s housewives didn't get laid as much.
No, probably not.
That's, I think, the difference.
Certainly not in as intriguing a fashion as we do. But to us, it's kind of recapturing a little bit of an element of chivalry, a little bit of an element of, roles. And it kind of doesn't matter what you decide your roles are together, but they're roles, and you stick to them until they don't work, and then you agree to modify them. But all of those things, the plating the food for me, the pouring the wine, the having doors open for her, I would say those are all elements of a 1950s lifestyle.
And she makes you a cocktail when you come home.
Exactly, the craft cocktails, which she loves to make.
Is she allowed to be in her PJs when you come home, or does she need to be like fully dressed?
Great question. The answer is yes, she's generally allowed to be in her PJs. But I will sometimes say, hey, I need you to go put this on for me. Or, I'm coming home and I want you dressed up because we're going to have one cocktail and we're going out, right? So I might set rules that are situational to an evening. She might be told to wear a Kajira dress or skirt, right? That's a sort of a free-flowing skirt that provides easy access to playful areas. Mm-hmm. So she might be told to do that. Or if she's told me earlier in the day that it's been a rough week and like she needs to have daddy-daughter movie time, I might say, okay, go get in your comfy PJs because we're going to snuggle up and watch a movie together, right? So she might be instructed to do something that she needs to do anyway.
I don't know how to ask this really. it's probably going to seem weird, but if you, well, it's probably going to be like
we're talking about.
I know.
What we're about to talk about, and you're going to label something as seeming weird. Okay, I can't wait.
Yeah, well, it's actually probably not as weird now as you're hoping. But so I feel like sometimes if someone's being submissive, they feel like they need to even speak to you in a certain way. Like, do y'all get to have just regular fun together and then be like playful and like funny and like witty and all those things? Or do you think that's kind of tapered down with them because of the relationship? Do they have the freedom, do you think, to really be themselves all the time?
I certainly hope that they have the freedom to be themselves. In fact, I think that that's part of the goal, is that they have the ultimate freedom to be themselves, and that these things that we do are part of themselves, right? The need to submit to someone, particularly me, the need to be owned by someone, the need to be used by somebody, the need to be under strict protocols, these are all parts of themselves that we're exploring together. That doesn't mean that things can't be light and playful. It's just that there's a time for everything. So we definitely joke and play around. And sometimes that, happens more in the daddy little girl space than it does in the master submissive space, right? If we were at a play party in a dungeon under formal rules, if I fumbled slightly with a carabiner I'm attaching, right, I certainly wouldn't expect either one of them to laugh or make a joke about it, right? Whereas in a different context, if I, did something that was slightly off, then they could laugh, right? So it's just situational.
How did you decide between you and Kitten that she was ready to be your slave? And did you guys have some sort of, like, if it's almost like being married, did you have a ceremony or something? Or does she have, like, a ring or anything that you gave her? What was that like?
Yes. We decided that we wanted to take our relationship from dominant submissive to master slave, and partly in acknowledgement of everything that we'd already done and come through together, and partly in expectation of our plans. So we made that decision prior to living together, and we knew that if we were going to take the step of living together, that's the dynamic that we wanted to have. So we actually went through what's called a consideration period in the lifestyle. So the master creates a contract, and you review that contract together. The submissive or slave says, everything in this is great, I'm willing to do all these things, or, hey, number 9 confuses me, can you clarify? Or, point number 7 really scares me, I don't want to do that. So you negotiate that contract just like any business contract or any agreement between two people. And then we had a consideration time period where we tried to live by that contract together and see if it worked. At the end of that time period, again, you can modify along the way, right? If you realize Rule 17 is not working or was ambiguous,
how many rules are in there?
Great question. I don't have it in front of me, but there's roughly 20, 25 rules.
Okay.
Some of it is more guideline than rule, right? I'm not spelling out every detail of, bring me this fork at this type of dinner service, right? There's an expectation that you're sort of supposed to take the general guideline and then combine them with manners for a formal dinner, or the rules enforced at a certain dungeon, right? Because dungeon spaces might have their own rules, right? But for us, there's about 20 or 25 rules. So we negotiated that. We lived by it for a set of time. And then we had a formal ceremony, which for us was just the two of us. We chose to do it that way. We took some pictures of them and posted them on Fet, so you can see them on my profile or hers. Other people do have a public ceremony, but we chose to do it, the two of us.
What is the ceremony like?
It was just a very intimate ceremony that involved us talking about what we had accomplished and what we meant to each other. Picture a wedding proposal almost, more like the two parties just there in a really intimate moment. And then we both signed the contract. I placed a collar on her neck. And then shortly after that, she got a tattoo that also commemorates the fact that she's my slave.
Is that a giant tattoo on her stomach that says Daddy with a lock on it?
That is correct. The daddy's girl with the lock on it on her stomach.
It's big.
Yes.
Okay. If anyone is on FetLife, you can see that picture there.
Absolutely.
I saw that. Usually tattoos ruin relationships, but it hasn't for you.
No, absolutely not. And then to mark our second anniversary, she got another set of tattoos. She got 2 stars, one tattooed on the back of each thigh. And so that represents many things, but it represents the 2 of us. It represents the 2 years. It's the Texas 5-pointed star, so it represents where we live here in Austin.
I've always wanted to check out Austin. Maybe I'll center it around one of your dungeon parties.
There you go.
First of all, not to be like rude. I love how I like say things, but you are.
Yeah, your preambles.
I'm like and it's really not that crazy,
like,
right?
What's coming here?
Yeah, I know. You're older than they are.
Yes.
Okay. And can you give me, so you talked about the daddy dom little girl situation. I kind of want to know, I know you might not want to say their ages, but like their age range maybe of who they are and then how they identify in their little situation, and then like kind of around your age, just so people can get an idea of what this like feels like.
Sure. So in general terms, I'm late 40s. Kitten is early 40s. Rose is mid-20s. Some people are very definitive about if they're identifying as a little, they're like, oh, my little is I'm 6, or oh, I can be Stacy at 6 and, Stephanie at 12 or whatever. We're a lot less precise about those numbers, but just to give your audience some idea, I would say that Kitten, if she's going to act little, might act like around 12 or 13, and Rose might be a little bit younger than that, like maybe 8 to 10. But it's kind of, those labels are maybe helpful to get some idea, but they're really misleading in a way too, because like if you're being a 10-year-old, it's not like you've forgotten how to drive, right? So they're only useful at the very highest level to understand sort of what somebody might want or not, right?
How do people even know that they're a little, and how do they act, and is it just sexually or is it in general? And I'm kind of just curious about the whole thing, because I want to say something. When I go on airplanes, I make a joke that I have to travel like I'm like 7 years old, because I have to have a plethora of snacks. I take a coloring book, I take crayons, like I have to have games on my phone, like I have to like literally treat myself like I'm a child, or I might not be able to get through the trip. So once I've been, and like I still sleep with stuffed animals, so, and I am very playful. So once I've started learning about this, I'm like, OMG, should I make myself a little space in my house where I can just go and like play? Right. Would that make me happy? Or like, how do people even know that this is their thing? And I
think that's a really great question. So, adult coloring books are a thing now, right?
Yeah.
So in coloring books that are like marketed as adult coloring books, they're typically more intricate pictures, harder to color, maybe more advanced themes, like Game of Thrones, right? A Game of Thrones coloring book. Hopefully your 6-year-old or 10-year-old is not watching Game of Thrones. Maybe you still give them a Game of Thrones coloring book. But if you're an adult and you're super into that show, an intricate Game of Thrones coloring book might be what you want. Whereas if you're a child, an actual child, maybe you just want a stereotypical, oh, here's a very simple picture of a castle and a prince, right? Does wanting to color an adult coloring book make you a little? No, I don't think it does. Does it mean you're exploring something that you did explore as a kid? Yes, maybe. I mean, I think that to almost everyone, being a kid exists in some degree within them, right? I think if you have, whatever 10% degree that you enjoy those things, are you a little? Are you a middle? Well, you can define yourself that way if you want to be, or you could just say, hey, I'm an adult that likes to kick loose and act like a kid sometimes.
Yeah, but like, how are they when they're in that space? Or how did they, like, is it sexually fun, or is it just something they do outside of that when they're moodier? Like, how does it play out for them?
Yeah, it's definitely something that would exist outside of a sexual scene. For example, either one of them might want to have daddy-daughter movie night where we're all snuggled up on the couch. And like, how is that different from a normal couple snuggled up on the couch? Well, Normal couples might not make a tent fort out of blankets, or there may not be stuffies on the couch for the normal couple, doing Netflix and chill. And obviously I'm using normal here ironically because I'm not saying that any of these behaviors are abnormal. I just mean more usual, right? Somebody who identifies as super little might feel comforted sucking a pacifier. So they might be on a St. Andrew's cross having the shit beat out of them in a dungeon scene, and then their aftercare is give me my pacifier and my favorite stuffy, right? It might be sort of an aftercare thing, but aftercare could be after a play scene, or it could be after just a really hard day too. It might be like, hey, pick me up. I want upsies, right? There's a variety of things that could feel comforting to someone, especially if you're doing intense things like we do in the BDSM community sometimes.
Okay, so it's more of like a consoling.
Consoled, nurturing, right? Yeah. Consoling, nurturing, protected. It's like, oh, you're cold. Okay, Daddy will get up and go turn the thermostat, So
they don't have like a Care Bear room.
Well, so
I want a Care Bear room now that I said that.
Yeah, exactly. So Rose does like stuffies. So like a good gift for me to give her might be, here's a new stuffy, right? Or an assignment that she might be given is, oh, hey, send me a picture of you and, one of your stuffies before you go to sleep if I'm not there. Kitten doesn't have stuffies, so there's a difference there. Let's talk about what you need. What sort of domination do you feel you need to have explored with you?
Jeez, I don't like people asking me questions. Let's continue on you for a little bit longer.
Oh, we're focused on me too. So if you were to do a dungeon scene with MFdom, what would you think might be interesting to include in that?
I haven't done most things. So I've never been on one of those cross things. I guess It's called the St. Andrew's cross.
So doing a cross thing, being tied up?
Yeah.
Are you interested in exploring bottoming for rope, bottoming for impact?
Yes, and actually I get to go get tied up tonight at a rope studio.
Get out.
Yeah, so one of my earlier interviews is with a woman who has a rope studio. Her name is Lady Leonine, and she's letting me and a friend come try out rope play.
Excellent.
So I don't think it's going to be a sexual scenario. It's just going to be like getting tied and stuff.
Excellent.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about that because I've never tried anything like that before. The only relationship, the kind of that I had talked about, actually the reason why I started this podcast was I was in a relationship one time that was degrading. It was very confusing because I don't think that specific relationship was very good for me, especially at that time. But I also loved it. But I don't think the aftercare was very good, and I don't think I really knew until after we weren't together that he actually really cared about me as a person. If I had those things added in as well, it might be something I would be willing to explore.
So degradation is another great example of something that people experiment with in the lifestyle, and the relationship between that and aftercare is super important, I think, for most people that do practice it or participate in it, because if you've done a scene for 45 minutes where part of that scene is you're being told you're worthless or whatever you've agreed between each other is fair game to humiliate the other one about, then you might very well need to be told afterwards that, hey, yes, you are, not able to hold that position for 5 minutes, but I still love you. Or you did great. You made it to 4 minutes, whereas last time you only made it to 3 minutes. Or, those things I said about you weren't true. Or, yes, they are true, but I still love you, right? You may very well need to have that sort of come down and reconnection in a very protective way after the humiliation play.
Why do you think that? I guess I'm making an assumption halfway, but not all the way, because I have seen pictures where you use the slut spanking thing on people, and it makes their butt say slut. I guess wherever you want, but the pictures you have is slut-butted. Butt slut.
Slut-butted people. Exactly.
So I'm just was guessing you use the term worthless, and you also said earlier they might just want to be used by somebody sometimes. Why do you want to tell somebody they're worthless and a slut and that they deserve to be used? What does that feel like to you when you're saying it to somebody? And I know that most people that do that get some pleasure out of it. What do you think that is for you?
So there's two answers. One is what I get out of it. One is what my partner gets out of it. And the answer to the first is partly based on the second, right? So for me as a dom, part of what I'm getting out of any of it is the reaction. If I'm tying someone who doesn't want to be tied, I mean, obviously, first of all, they have to consent to it no matter what. But if they consent to it grudgingly because I need somebody to tie, okay, that's fine if I really have to have somebody to tie at that moment for a class. That's one thing. But, like, I don't want to do something if the other person isn't into it, not for very long, right? It might be fine for, again, once if you're doing it for a class or whatever. But part of the answer for me is what is the other person responding to, right? If they want or need to be humiliated and I see that they're getting something from that, then that drives me. That drives me to say, okay, maybe they want to be humiliated just a little bit more, right? Some people are very particular about humiliation. Like, for example, they might be okay with saying, yeah, you can criticize my makeup and my hairdo. Don't criticize my weight because I had an eating disorder when I was a child, or because I'm self-conscious about my weight, right? Like that's actually hitting too close to something. Or they might say, oh, make fun of my appearance all you want, but don't say I'm stupid, right? So certain people are very particular about what they do and don't want to be humiliated and degraded about. So you have to be very careful to understand that and stay within those boundaries. But again, part of what I'm getting out of it is the reaction. So if they're not into it, then it's not going to be fun for me. But I would say, absent all that, I do like to tease people, like even just in a vanilla sense. I do like that kind of dynamic. I had a brother that, we teased each other growing up all the time, and we tried to sort of out-sarcasm each other, out-snark each other, right? So snarky comments about somebody, to me, is just part of the world. In terms of what I get out of it, I love sort of playing that little teasing role, and it can get as dark as the person on the other end wants it to, within whatever is okay with them. Now, you mentioned a couple of terms. You mentioned worthless, you mentioned slut. To me, I mean, worthless that's pretty serious, right? That's pretty hardcore. I wouldn't typically go to worthless, but I might say, you're not very good, are you? Or you're not very good at that. Or, you just really can't control yourself, can you, right? It's a slightly more playful form of the same thing. Slut, to me, is very different. Like, slut to me is not necessarily a derogatory thing at all. I mean, I'm a bit of a slut, right? I've got multiple partners. I'm like down for a lot of stuff. So
yeah, being a slut, I don't think is like bad at all. Like it's just become a bad word.
I'm not even sure that one's meant to feel mean or bad. I think that is meant to. It's almost more of like foreplay to call somebody, oh yeah, you're slutty to get into this rope, aren't you, right? To me, slut is a very positive thing.
Oh, do you talk to them about the psychological aspects of how things are affecting them, or how do you ask them why they like to feel humiliation and stuff, or do you not really get into that? I wonder, like, if people just talk about it too much, they might feel like it's something they need to work on and overcome, and then do they want to do that?
No, we definitely talk about it. I think communication is important, and trying to understand where somebody is and where they want to go, and understanding that might change too, right? So that's one of the really interesting things to me is when you first start playing with somebody, you might go through what the do's and don'ts are, right? And people talk about limits. Soft limits and hard limits. Hard limits are something that they definitely don't want to do. Soft limits are something that maybe more like, no, not right now, but if we play together repeatedly, maybe we can explore that or something. I think you have to discuss continually what people feel about these things and then realize that it's going to change.
So you have an entire room that's a dungeon in your home.
It's a dungeon play space. It's not entirely filled with kink because there is a pool table and a pinball machine.
What kind of pinball machine is it?
Matahari.
Fun. Okay, so why don't you lead us through a vocal tour of your dungeon room?
Okay, so touring the dungeon at CastleATX. So coming into the dungeon, first is the more vanilla portion, where we have a pool table and a pinball machine and a TV, game station, etc. And then we sort of have the transition zone where there is a bar. We have two
That's where you'll find me.
Fridges. Yeah, you'll be right here.
I'll be in the transition station staring at the other side and having drinks.
We have 2 little mini fridges. One is dedicated to non-alcoholic drinks, and the other is alcoholic drinks. Then we have the rest of the dungeon is for fetish play and also photo shoots. So there is a 4-poster bed here that has a mosquito net canopy hanging from it. So I guess that's one of the most distinctive features. Your viewers can't see this, but the dungeon has very large beams going across the ceiling. And so those can be used to suspend people from in shibari, or even just, immobilize people to if you're going to do impact. They're also useful for hanging photographic backdrops and the like, because sometimes I'm doing photography. I want a clean background so I can hang a backdrop. You can see we've got rings for suspension hanging off the beams. We've had a structural engineer certify how much we can hang off of each beam, so we can have quite a few bottoms suspended here at once. Yeah, we have a massage table. We have a table that we can lay kinky implements out on, anything from floggers to knives to cuffs.
Tell us about your kinky table.
So the kinky table we have, there's a lot. We have rope in various colors because I love doing the photography and making it all look very pretty. We've got a variety of impact implements, some floggers, some thuddier impact implements, some stingier impact implements. There's a set of these wonderful colored ceramic kitchen knives, and so they're so great for photos and doing knife play, but especially if you're going to photograph the knife play.
Do you like to draw blood or you don't?
I wouldn't say I like to, like it's not the goal. I'm not going after a very bloody scene, but I'm not like shocked by it as long as the bottom's okay. Hey, we're going to do this knife play. You might get scratched a little bit. The same with impact. So impact can often go to the point of drawing blood. It's not necessarily the goal, but I'm not squeamish about it.
And you, talking about all that stuff you have on your table, you have a bunch of impact toys.
Yes.
Is that one of your favorites things to do?
Yes, impact is definitely something I like doing, especially when I combine it with other things or combine it with photography or have a bottom that says, I really just want to really receive some heavy impact. It's going to be cathartic to me. It's going to chase away this bad week, and I really want some bruises. I want to be bruised so that tomorrow I see these bruises and remember it. So
I saw a couple pictures where the whole back side of one of your girls is just completely black and blue.
Yes.
And you like doing that because that's what they want to? But part of you just probably likes finding partners that will let you do that. You like to do it.
When I first started doing impact, I wouldn't say I'm a mean person. I'm not first and foremost about giving pain, right? So I like teasing people. I like pushing people. I like sometimes causing playful discomfort in other people. I can certainly like causing pain too, but again, the feedback has to be there. For a bottom that isn't very into pain, then it's not as much fun. Maybe we'll keep it much more lighter, right? I don't want to go beyond where the bottom wants to be. But if the bottom identifies as a pain slut, if the bottom says, hey, I really want to go harder, then I can definitely do that. And to me, it's not so much about causing pain, it's about taking them where they want to be, and for me it's about physicality. So think about playing football or rugby or maybe running a marathon. You're pushing yourself athletically in a sense, right? I have all these impact implements, but one of the things I use the most is my hands, either barehanded or just my fist. So I might be squatting down, just pounding away at somebody's bottom for 10, 20 minutes straight. It's like punching a punching bag. If that's what they want.
Yeah, that's a lot of punching.
Yeah.
And you're not a little guy.
No. So.
Do they cry and stuff?
Yes, I've had bottoms cry either during or after the scene. Yes. But
it's like a good cry?
Yeah, it's like a release cry.
You were about to show me another drawer or something?
This is the Kink Cabinet. It's got a variety of skulls across the top, a couple of real animal skulls like cow and deer, and then there are some fake human skulls. I want to get a real human skull, but I don't have a real human skull yet.
If I die before you do, I can give you my skull.
Oh, would you?
Yeah, I can donate it to you.
That would be fantastic. I would love that for a photo shoot.
I always get curious how often people in poly relationships and in this community are actually getting laid?
Quite frequently.
Okay. So like 4 times a week?
Probably more.
Okay.
Yeah, more.
So your little girls keep you busy, especially the 20-something-year-old, I bet.
Yes. Sex multiple times a day is not unusual. I wouldn't say it's the norm because we're pretty busy, but
right.
On average, it's probably going to average out to sex every day.
Okay. And then do you ever spend the night at Rose's house, or does she come over to your place often, or how does that look since Kitten lives with you?
Yeah. So fortunately, it's a big house, so there's room for overnight guests. There's also, I do travel, so there's like, we're going to go to this conference together for 3 or 4 days, right? So hotel sex is awesome. You can leave behind all the messy sheets for somebody else. But yeah, overnight is definitely something that we do.
And one of your favorite things to do now is work on fetish photography.
Absolutely. That is one of my huge fetishes, is fetish photography.
You like to take fetish photography of you getting sucked off?
That's true.
That's your dick I'm seeing?
That is in any of the POV shots. Yeah, it's either my dick or my hand.
It's a very nice dick.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's also a fetish. MFdom's big thick cock is also a fetish on Fet.
What do you love about fetish photography?
So fetish photography to me is huge. It's a huge part of why I'm in the lifestyle, is to sort of capture these moments and try to play with them. And some of them are real-time captures of stuff that's going on, like getting a blowjob. Others are a little bit more staged. So, we've gone to the trouble of getting pumpkins and smashing pumpkins on someone, or going out to a specific site in nature. A lot of the photography we do is outdoors. So it's so much. It's about capturing what I'm into. It's about capturing what other people are into. It's capturing that feeling that the submissive or the bottom is having when they're giving in or they're releasing, or in some cases recreating that, right? Some of the photo shoots are live and some are staged.
What strikes me from the fetish photography that you've done is a lot of like vulnerability. Mm-hmm. As I've been talking to more and more people, it's starting to feel like a lot of people that are into BDSM or kink, it's more of an exploration of like their limits and their subconscious and what they can go through and what they can come out of.
Yeah, you said it extremely well. Thank you. Yeah, there's certainly a lot of variety there, right? There's some of the pictures are there, just it's rope and it looks pretty. Some of it is like a little bit of edginess, risky because it was in public, right?
Sorry, do you have a few more minutes? Because I have a couple more questions.
I do.
Oh, when did you first get into this lifestyle or know that it was something that you wanted to be a part of? What was your introduction like?
I've been exploring this lifestyle for about 20 years. It began actually in, I think, San Francisco was, the first fetish club I ever went to. And I'm like, this is interesting. And again, I loved watching the experiences people were having and, felt like there was a lot to explore. So
it's just a pretty normal transition into just going to a kink club and be like, yo, I like this.
Yeah. I think and that's how it started. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Veering up to the end of our episode, I hate to end this call, but I'm curious what your bucket list sexual scenarios could possibly be.
Bucket list sexual scenarios. That is a great one. So I love to travel. I love to photograph experiences, different places. The one continent I haven't visited yet is Antarctica. So my sexual bucket list has to be going to Antarctica and having mind-blowing sex at the bottom of the world, preferably 2 or 3 lovely ladies, and maybe some suspension involved, definitely photography involved.
Would you make them be naked out there?
Absolutely.
They could die. You probably have like 30 seconds
We'll have to
get your picture.
Yeah, the bulk of the sex may have to happen on the icebreaker ship or whatever. I mean, at the very least, there has to be like a rope harness on under the harness, right? Do the quick flash, drop to your knees, blow me for 20 seconds. Then we can run back to the cruise ship to finish up.
We will have your links to your art and your pages in the show notes if people are curious. But one last time, you have thecastleATX on FetLife, you have MFdom on FetLife, and you have MFphotodom on Instagram.
That is right.
Okay, so everyone go check you out. And I want to thank you so much for just like sharing so much information and being so open with us and just letting you know how your lifestyle works and how it's been like a pleasurable, wonderful experience for you and your partners.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about it all. It's been really interesting, and I love chatting with you. I hope your audience likes it.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Okay, you too.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
So the recording quality is a little bit different on this one because I forgot to push the like mic button, I guess, so it recorded from a different place, whatever. I hope you guys still enjoyed the content, and I loved making it, and I think he's got a lot of really cool stuff to say. If you live in Texas, you should go to the Castle Dungeon, because if I lived in Texas, I would go to the Castle Dungeon. Thanks, guys, for listening again. Please rate and subscribe. I'm so happy you're here. I'm happy we're a part of each other's lives. I hope I make yours better. You listening makes mine better. It makes me so happy. I also love getting messages, so feel free to email me at interestingsexpodcast@gmail.com or send me a message over Instagram, Interesting Sex Podcast. Y'all are rad. 10% of any profits from Interesting Sex Podcast is going to go to help stop sex and human trafficking. I can't think of anything worse than a child being human or sex trafficked. We are very fortunate to get to have sex with who and how we want. And let's just think for a moment and see what we can do to help others who are not afforded that same right as we are. Be grateful for what we have, y'all. Thanks again for being here. Thank you to the band 41 for this awesome music. Go check them out at 41music.net. They're cool. Thanks again. See you next Tuesday to find out what the pussy drags in.